And I talked about it in my review of her book. Why am I blanking on the name of her book? Why am I not good at life today? Why? Hi everyone, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter I Converse. Today's video is going to be a little bit different in that I'm going to talk a little bit more about writing than I normally do. And I've had some people ask in my comments to do some videos about writing or talk about writing a little bit. And I thought I would do that, but still kind of like tie it in to reading and authors I follow and like podcasts and I was going to say trainings, some like online classes that I've taken and just sort of like all of it. So maybe there will be a little bit of something for everybody, maybe not, I don't know. But I thought I would give it a go. And you know, I love obviously talking about books, but I also love talking about writing. And I feel like I'm more and more kind of like starting to talk about kind of both sides of the table when I talk about when I read books, and sort of how I explore different authors and kind of fangirl over things and follow authors and dig a lot into their backgrounds and their writing process. So part of what sparked this was some people had mentioned it in comments, and the other thing that sparked it is a couple weeks ago I took an online writing class led by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which like, I know, like shut the front door, I almost died. Not even kidding. I was like reading email at lunch one day and it literally was like a sponsored email through a different writing, you know, like I'm signed up for all sorts of writing things and I'm always like, yes, have your sponsors send me emails. And you know, 9 out of 10 times it's nothing that's really applicable. But in this case, it was an email from a website called She Writes and She Writes University. And they just launched this 8-part online writing course series. And the first one was Taylor Jenkins Reid and it was taking place that night. So like the completely obsessive person that I am, I quickly like read up about it and read up about the other 8 classes, and they were doing a promotion where if you signed up for 2, you got the 3rd one free. You know, they kind of had like, you could do all 8 of the classes and like save, I think like $100 or something like that. But I decided to do the buy 2, get 1 free. And basically you had live access to the live online training course, which was like 90 minutes, which was also very impressive. And it was like an hour of training and like 30 minutes for Q&A. And then like a day or 2 later, you get the audio recording of the training. So you can constantly like refer back to it, which is also completely cool. So I did it, I signed up for it, and it was so amazing as you guys can possibly imagine. And you know by now that I love Taylor Jenkins Reid on every level. And I just discovered her back in April when I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And obviously she's been out in the world for a while. And I want to say Daisy Jones is her 7th book, which I also read. And I've just sort of been like slowly devouring her backlist. And for Contemporary-a-thon, I had put Maybe in Another Life on my list and I didn't get to it. So if you saw my Contemporary-a-thon video, I did wind up reading 3 books. I was having a really rough week and I was having a really hard time connecting with books and getting into books and like sticking with the books. And I think part of it is I was just like distracted by work and things kind of going on outside of my reading life. And the other part of it is just the books weren't, I don't want to say they weren't enough to distract me, but like I just was having a very hard time finding a story that I wanted to read. And I like DNF'd a couple books and I tried to do some first chapters and like they weren't clicking. So what I really didn't want to do was dive into a book that I am so excited to read and have it either be a bad experience or not give it my all. So I kind of shelved the book. But I think I'm going to pick it up now. And this actually isn't, this is just a bookmark for when I actually get to the book. So I haven't started it at all. But I have this book and then one other book. I think it's her 2nd book, After I Do, is the only other book of hers that I haven't read. So I am obsessed with her as a writer, as a reader, as a creator, as a fangirl, just all of it. And to be able to have a writing class led by her was incredible. So her class was really focused on research, and sort of when I initially saw the topic, I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to write a book about like a 70s rock and roll band or, you know, Hollywood starlet from the 50s. So it's like I'm writing a book that's contemporary. There's present day, there's 10 years in the past. It takes place in Boston. I went to school there. I lived there. Like, I know this. I am like writing what I know without writing a completely biographical book. Did that already and threw it under the bed many, many years ago. And I'm just sort of like, I don't need to do research. And listening to this class, A, I have completely changed my mind about research. B, it's a lot less scary than it used to be. And C, I realized how completely necessary it is. And the way she talked about research and her approach to it and how it impacts her books and how it makes them so authentic and completely informs everything she does, like my mind blown. I have a completely different thought process now than I did before I took this class when it comes to approaching research. And well, I would never say I would like dismiss the value of research for a book. When I think about writing like a contemporary book, I'm like, well, I've lived this. What do I need to research? I was there. You realize how much, I feel like A, you forget, B, not to keep listing things in like a letter format here, just how much you can put into your story to have it ring in that authentic way. And I'm obviously not going to go into the entire course because that would be ridiculous and we don't have 90 minutes, and I'm not gonna, and because no, I'm not. But I will say like some small examples. You know, when she talked about how she will spend 45 minutes looking for a detail as simple as, or what seems to be as simple as, the perfume someone wore. So one example she gave was talking about like a car. So if she was, and this is, I'm making this up, and she was making this up, but like if she was gonna pick what car Billy drove in Daisy Jones and the Six back in 1972, anybody could Google cars that came out in 1972, cars people drove in 1972, come up with a make and model, throw it in the story and move on. But for her, she went into the fact that she was like, okay, so there's a car, but would Billy drive a brand new car? Would Billy have a car that he's been driving for 5 years or 10 years? Would Billy be driving a car that he's been driving for 5 years, but he got it secondhand? So, I mean, now we're like, was it a car that came out in 1962? You know, would it have been passed down to him from a parent, like it was his dad's old car and he was driving it, in which case maybe the car's 15 years old. And what would that car look like? And what does that car say about who his father is as a person? Never mind who Billy is as a person. And it's so much more than just saying, I'm making this up, like a Ford was popular in 1972 and Billy drives a Ford. Because how many people were driving brand new cars in 1972? And she just went into this entire sort of unraveling of the story of like how she gets to like what kind of car her character is going to drive. And it like completely changed my thought process about picking anything, whether it is fashion or cars or, she, you know, she talks about perfume, you know, are you the kind of person that, you know, Chanel No. 5's been around for 100 years, anybody could wear it. What's distinctive about that? What does that say about a person? You know, or would you go for a more obscure perfume that maybe is obscure in some ways, but recognizable enough of a name, or something that was more unique to the time that has since been discontinued? You know, if you talk about like Charlie perfume or something like that, what is that? Or Shalimar, like what is that? What image does that conjure for you? What does that tell you about the woman who's wearing it? Or what does that tell you about the man who's buying it for his wife? So she went down so many different examples, incredible. A lot of it related to Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones, which was just insane. She talked about like where she goes for her inspiration, literally, whether it is websites. She talked about going to thrift stores and, you know, looking at clothes that Daisy might wear. I mean, how she got to outfits that Daisy was wearing was just amazing to me. Like, it's just absolutely mind-boggling to me. And I mean, I've had a ton of respect for her, period. I have so much more respect for her than I ever had before. The way her brain works is just amazing. She also talks about what is possible and how you can put something in a story that's not possible and it can pull someone out of it, or someone's going to recognize it. as not being possible. And that's not to say that you can't make things up or that you can't take creative license. But for her, particularly when she was talking about Daisy Jones and, you know, Evelyn Hugo, she wanted to make sure that the things that she was talking about could have actually happened at the time. And if, you know, there wasn't a pool at the Chateau Marmont, then Daisy couldn't have jumped into the pool in the dress and had that amazing photo taken of her. And she said, you know, if she came to find out that there wasn't a pool there back at the time when Daisy would have been there, she would have had that scene take place in a different hotel. So for her, adding a fictional pool in a nonfiction place was not enough. It had to be something that people could say that could have happened then. And I love that concept. And I think there's sort of like two ways that people go about things. And you can make a completely fictional town, which lots of authors do so no one can call them out on stuff, or you can put pools on top of buildings that don't have pools and people call you out on that and a lot of people don't care. And if you are someone who is trying to make this feel like an authentic story about a band or a movie star, you want people to be able to say that could have happened there. I was there at that time. This feels real to me. So the way her thought process on research works was just, again, fascinating to me. And I walked away with so many amazing tips, so many things that I'm excited to do. I also love that one of her research techniques, on top of like reading books like crazy that have to do with the time, whether it is nonfiction or fiction, she also talks about, you know, watching TV shows. And she talks about like when she wrote One True Loves, and there's, you know, a lot of it at the beginning is in a hospital, you know, what's acceptable, what's accepted as like hospital talk and hospital behavior. And she's like, I watched a ton of Grey's Anatomy. You know, if you want to write a book about teens in the 90s, watch yourself some Dawson's Creek. Look at what they're wearing. Look at how they interact. You know, look at what the hairstyles are. So I'm just like, you're so my kind of girl. Like, let's watch TV, let's consume pop culture like nobody's business, let's get ideas from these places. And I just like, my brain was buzzing. And she gave a great book recommendation. So if there's other writers out there, I had never heard of this book before. It's called The Describer's Dictionary. Of course, like as soon as you put something out into the universe, I have since heard about this on a podcast that I was listening to today. But this is a book that like, it is quotes, from other writers, but it's also, it gives you descriptions on everything from houses to how to describe colors, weather, earth and sky. It's just, it gives great examples of how to add detail to your books and have it feel real, and how to not feel like, it sort of like straddles that line between like, it's not boring and basic, but it's not like, I went so deep down the thesaurus hole that I'm just using 10-cent words. So I love it. I love it. And then I had also, unrelated to this, was listening to another podcast with Rachel Herron called, you think I would remember these things because I listen to them so much, but I'm failing at life today. Bear with me. Called How Do You Write? And she was interviewing Liz Fenton, who is an author I've talked about, and her and Lisa Steinke, who are like besties, and they co-write books together. They wrote The Two Lila Bennetts, amongst other things. But she was talking about another book called The Emotion Thesaurus, which you can bet your bottom dollar I've added to my Amazon cart while I was listening to that podcast, which, similar to this book, talks about how to describe emotions, and physical characteristics and like mannerisms and things like that. So how to add, again, more layers to your book, more layers to your characters, more authenticity to it, more descriptiveness without being like ridiculous, and having it feel more natural and not like be taking people out of the books. So there's just so many pearls of wisdom from all sides. And then, because I'm me, I was feeling very Taylor Jenkins Reid inspired again today. And I was also listening to a podcast called Show Your Work, and I'll list all this stuff down below. And this is not one that I had heard of before. And this is kind of like, it's sort of like a pop culture, I would say, podcast. And there were two with Taylor Jenkins Reid. So it was like one interview broken up into two parts, and it aired back in the spring when Daisy Jones came out. So a lot of it is just sort of about her and her process. There's a very interesting piece of it where she talks about being a working mom and the support of her husband and sort of the bias against women who want to work, women with children who choose to be, who choose to work versus have to work, and how she gets some like pushback from people and people who don't understand that. And she talks a lot about also kind of how it relates in like real life, and also, no spoiler, but there's like a part in Daisy Jones about women who choose not to have children and the stigma that still exists around that, and things that people say to women who choose not to have children. It's a very interesting conversation. So it goes way beyond just her book. So if anyone is interested in that, I highly recommend it. But there's also so many pearls of wisdom in it. And one of the things that I really thought was amazing, just so much inspiration gleaned, but she was talking about sort of talent versus capability. And how, kind of we're all capable of so many things, and we have a choice, whether we want to push ourselves, whether we want to stay where we are. And she was talking about her newest book, which she's referring to as Malibu, because it takes place in Malibu. And she was saying how it is sort of the most ambitious book she's written to date, and it's told in third person, which is the first time she's doing that. And how she sort of approached it in the sense of like, okay, like, I've got this, like I did the transcription with the band, I did the interview with Evelyn Hugo, I've done first person, I've done multiple viewpoints, like I got this, like I've done everything, this is gonna be easy. And she said it's like the hardest thing she's ever had to try and write, but she wants to keep challenging herself, and she wants it to be the best that it can be, and she wants to be the best writer that she can be. And she was talking about how, how she's glad that her desire to work hard outweighs her talent, because what a shame it would be if she was completely capable of something but didn't take advantage of it, so to speak. And she said, I'm willing to do more than I'm capable of, and so because of that I will become capable of more. And I just thought that was incredible, like if you think about it. Like I'm willing to do the work and I'm going to become more capable because of it. And she just wants to continue to make herself a better writer. I just love it. And I feel like it is so easy to be, writer's block is a myth, but for the sake of this, blocked, unmotivated, procrastinating, feeling dried up on ideas, feeling like your ideas suck, feeling like you have nothing left in you. I will say the downside of a new job is I come home feeling super depleted every night of creative juices, of motivational juices. I don't want to work out. I don't want to see people. I don't want to do anything other than like come home, take a shower, and go to bed. Like it's been kind of like a jarring transition period, I would say. And just sort of this reminder of pushing yourself, and you are capable of so much more than you realize sometimes, and you have to invest in yourself and push yourself sometimes. So I literally could have cried listening to this podcast. It was that dang good. So a few other things I just wanted to mention about that She Writes University online writing classes. So this is a no way sponsored. This is me just trying to pass along some information to people who might be interested. I will put their website down below also, but they have, like I said, it's 8 classes. 2 of them have happened already, but you can still kind of like buy the audio recording for them. But I also signed up for one with Wendy Walker in a couple of weeks about sort of thriller writing. And then I signed up for one about sort of the entire querying process. And like there's one on memoirs. There's a few others. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I wound up, like I said, doing kind of like the buy 3, get 1 free type of a deal. But I'm really excited for the Wendy Walker one and a thriller writing one. And we'll see. Hopefully this is something they will continue to do. Like I said, this is the first time they're doing it. And then She Writes itself is a website where I haven't had a chance to really explore it. I've signed up. I believe you can post on it, kind of like I think how Medium is, but I think it's like women writers, women content. Not that it's like content just about women, but it's like a website for women by women. And there's a podcast that goes with it, because I mean, podcast for everything it seems, doesn't there? And it is called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. So I also subscribe to that. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet because in my podcasting journey, and I talked about this also in my Contemporary-a-thon video, I finally read The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and I was Googling her, looking for some podcasts with her because I find her very fascinating. And I was surprised / pleased to find out that Mindy McGinnis herself has a podcast called Writer Pants on Fire. And she brings on other authors, some of who I've heard of, some I haven't. It is a completely like informative, fascinating podcast in that she talks about everything from like, you know, how people got their agents, how they query, craft advice, writing advice, other authors talking about their process. And then she shares so much of her own personal experience in how she approaches her books, her writing journey. It's a lot of encouragement. It's a lot of support for new writers. It's a lot of writers talking about their journeys, the ups and downs, that like, it's not all uphill when you get an agent. It's not all uphill when you get your first book. They talk about everything extremely transparently down to like what kind of money you actually make after you get your advance, and the myths about the money and what people are making. And while yes, there are some people who have like that crazy, you know, $500,000 deal, most people are not getting those kinds of deals and what it really means. And I did not know anything about Mindy McGinnis before listening to this, and it's very interesting to see how these authors have created these incredible careers, and how hard they have worked and how much they have put into it, and sort of the endurance you need and the perseverance you need. So it's been very encouraging to listen to, and I just love it. And she's got some really, really interesting people on hers, which has again introduced me to a whole bunch of new authors that I had never heard of before. So I've been loving that one. And then the other one that I was listening to again is How Do You Write? With Rachel Herron, which I talked about, which is where I learned about the emotion thesaurus with Liz Fenton in that interview. And she also talks a lot about her journey and her writing, and has some really interesting authors come on. And it's just wonderful to be in the world of these people. And again, I think whether you're a fan of the writing or you're an aspiring author or a published author, I think there's something to glean from all of these, whether it is some motivation from people, whether it is some understanding. You know, people talk about sort of, you know, the dark night of the soul and all these things that people go through and that we all go through. And it's really great to feel like there's a community, because writing is a very solitary, lonely business. So it's great to sort of have community there. So I've really been enjoying these podcasts. Like I said, I will list them all below. I'm looking down at my iPad to see which ones I'm missing. But on top of some of the other ones that I had mentioned to you guys already. And I'm just amazed at how much is out there, and just what an incredible world is out there for writers and for inspiration when you're looking for it. So I am someone who very much enjoys the story behind the story, and I don't want to, it's tricky because like some people, if it seems like they're gonna like talk about a spoiler or something like that about a book I haven't read yet, I immediately like pause it and save it for later. But I love listening to them talk about a book after I've read the book. And a lot of authors don't spoil anything, but it's like the context becomes a little bit different when you've read the book. And I love hearing where ideas come from or how they approach it. And it's definitely turned me on to a lot more books, or got me excited about a lot of books. Helped me discover new authors like I talked about. So it's been just a great journey. And I mean, the missing link here is that I've just gotta like stop listening to podcasts and start writing. And it's funny, I'm like listening to all these tips and tricks, and I'm like, yes, I'm gonna keep buying books that are gonna help improve my story. But like, I wanna say it was Victoria Schwab who was like, you can't edit a blank page. And in all fairness, my page is not blank. It's just moderately been ignored. And now that we are like October 1st-ish, I am at this point where I am gearing up for National Novel Writing Month, which starts November 1. And I am torn between, do I stop working on what I'm working on and start to do some research and focus on a new project that I'm gonna start for NaNoWriMo. Normally what I do for NaNoWriMo, for better or worse, is on November 1st, I sit down and I'm like, I'm gonna make up a story. If we're lucky on Halloween, I might have thought a little bit about what that story might be, maybe have like a little bit of an inkling. So I have an idea for a story that I want to run with. Part of me feels like I should be, you know, living the Taylor Jenkins Reid research life and be researching this month and prepare for writing this story. And part of me feels like I should not be neglecting the thing I'm working on because I still have ideas and I haven't put those ideas down on paper. So I'm sort of like totally torn here. A better woman would do both, but I don't know if I'm her. So we'll see what happens. But kind of my last Taylor Jenkins Reid that I'll say is that before she writes anything, she does a ton of research. And it's not a fixed time. Like she says, like you just sort of know when you know it's time to write, and you will continue to research throughout the process. But she didn't say like, I'm gonna write, you know, like a 70s rock band story, write it, and then go back and research and fill it in. She did all this research ahead of time. And I don't quite know like what my story is going to be yet. Like I have an idea for like a person who's gonna die, because obviously it's like a suspense thriller. A little bit of like background on the folks involved. But other than that, I don't know. So I'm not quite sure like what I want to research. I was thinking about this a little bit today. Like, do I want to try and write something that happened 20 years ago and try and dip into a different point in time? Partially thinking about how that impacts social media and cell phones and access to things. I kind of am playing with like trying to do a bit of like an isolated mystery. So I'm trying to kind of like sort that stuff out. So part of me feels like I should do some sort of research, but I don't know what that is. Part of me thinks I should go in blind. Part of me thinks I should go back to the thing that I'm working on. Part of me just wants to listen to podcasts, and part of me just wants to take a shower, get into bed, and start reading this. So I will leave you with a cliffhanger because I don't know what I'm going to do, but I do love talking about writing. And I do think I'm going to try and vlog in some shape or form my NaNoWriMo journey. So I don't know that I'm gonna vlog every day. This is in November, so nobody get too excited just yet. But I think it would be fun to kind of try and document that. So we'll see what happens there. And then unrelated also to that, can I also just say for a minute that I could not be more excited that Phoebe Waller-Bridge won all those Emmys the other night. I told you guys Fleabag was amazing. I am so excited it got its due this time around. It got completely ignored last year at the Emmys, which just hurts my heart in 100 ways, but man, did she get vindicated this year. She won Best Actress, the show took Best Show, they got Best Director. I mean, more power to them. And she is also, I think you guys maybe don't know, one of the creative forces behind getting Killing Eve on the screen, and to see Jodie Comer win was also amazing. So I just loved that night. And while yes, Fleabag is on Amazon, there's a little part of me that might buy myself season 1 because it's on sale on Amazon for $9.99 right now. So, or I mean on iTunes. Is that dumb? Because you can get it on Amazon, but then I kind of want to have it for myself. But she's also legit my hero. You talk about like a fearless, fierce force of a woman. Ugh, I love her. So I'm going to end on that note. This is a complete love fest for writers everywhere. I also love that while she was holding her Emmy, she was like, writing is hard, but this makes it all worth it. So there you go. That's my final thought for today. Thank you guys for listening, watching, all that good stuff. If there are fellow writers out there, let me know what books you read, what podcasts you listen to, if you're taking online classes, like what you do to stay motivated or learn more about your craft. I'm also seriously debating doing the masterclass all season pass. I talk like I'm made of money and I'm throwing money all over the place, but I'm also a lot of talk. But I think I might, maybe I'll treat myself to that for my birthday or something. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys do. And if you are just fans and readers, let me know if you do follow authors, or if there's, you know, if you dig deep into the background, or you just like to read the book and keep on trucking. So let me know what you guys do. I will see you soon. And thank you guys again for watching. Bye.